What's in the box?
Well, I'm pretty sure you already know, but aren't telling me for some bizarre...
Sounds like you got a text message. You gotta check that.
Mom, did you do this?
I'll let you go so you can look at that. I love you, Jamie.
I love you too, Mom.
Didn't really consider it necessarily just regular theater. It's activism theater, and we're trying to spread information and to inspire people to make a difference. One called Perfect, that's about expectations for perfection on the female body and how we can handle that as we grow up or exist as women in the world.
I want to be like her. Like her. Like her. No, not me. Me? You. Like you. You are so perfect. I hate you. I hate me. Me.
Anyway, I think Graham's right. You have to stand up for what you believe in. You know, I wish you'd both come with me. Graham?
I guess not this time, Megan.
Well, if you decide to come, I'll wait until 10 o'clock in front of North by Northwest.
Marilyn Jordan, Teamsters. This issue of lack of water deeply affects our exploding unhoused population. What are your plans for them?
Water for everyone. Jesus' first miracle was turning water into wine. If it were me, I would turn all of the city's wine into water and hand it out for free. Slap a sticker on it. Celeste Hall for county commissioner. I do think it's going really well.
It's going about as well as it ever does.
It kind of looks like blood, don't it?
Yeah. Now, if we only had a gun, we'd have all the ingredients for a murder.
Slam poetry is definitely a lot more about the performance. I think it's poetry meets dramatic monologue.
If you grew up in Spokane, you were always told, like, oh, you'll have to leave Spokane if you want to develop as an artistic person. But I think poetry has really helped build this narrative that Spokane is a place that you can be and can create great art there.
Hey! We're here.
You can't ever just take it easy and go with the flow and enjoy life, can you?
I don't see why we needed to come all the way up here.
Oh, I don't know, maybe because it's spontaneous?
Or maybe because there were lots of perfectly good tree lots much closer to home.
Oh, that is so like you. Just throw money at it. Isn't that the solution for everything?
Hey! I said we're here.
So, Chris, do you have any Christmas plans for tomorrow?
No, he doesn't. He's usually busy doing, well, everything. He just might say Christmas wouldn't be Christmas without him.
You might say that. But Christmas will need to learn to go on without me.
So, you know how I told you that this house has its stories to tell? Well, years ago, when Mrs. Bartlett moved in, she had a son. He loved this house by the lake. Almost every day he would go down to the dock and dive way down deep into the water. And then one day, he didn't come back up. Now Mrs. Bartlett just sits out there, watching.
Tony! Tony!
Thank you for joining us on the Downing Cut. Today, my guest is Rebecca Cook, a versatile figure in Washington's art and labor community. She has worked in film and theater as an actress, director, and producer, contributing to over 20 feature films and the Sci-Fi Channel's Z Nation. As a vice president of, and I know there's an acronym, but it's IATSE Local 488, she has served on several boards and runs Thundering Kitten Productions, directing award-winning short films while teaching film production and narrating audiobooks. Welcome to the Downing Cut, Rebecca. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks, Joe. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited.
We have a lot to unfold with what I just said here. First, what I like to know, and this is where I ask everyone, is how did your journey start? How did you get involved to where you are today? What was that path?
Cool. Long, winding, meandering, and unpredictable. But I think I've just always been drawn to the arts. If you'd ask, my 9-year-old self and my family, everyone would say I was going to be a writer. I used to write all the time. And then I discovered theater in junior high and high school, and really went down that path. I also went to the Skills Center, which for broadcasting. So I learned about, radio and television production there. And actually ended up going to SFCC and got my degree in radio broadcasting. And while I was doing that, I was doing theater and happened to do a show out at Eastern. And it was transformative. I will say I was on stage and like all this magical things happened with the set moving and things flying in from above. And I was in like a dress that had been made for me. And I just went, oh my God, I need to learn how to do all this stuff. So I went and got my theater degree out at Eastern.
Wow.
Tried living in Seattle for a very brief time after I graduated. I had a job offer over there and learned Seattle's a great place to visit, but my God, I don't want to live there. I'm a Spokenite, and this is where I belong and where I want to be. So came home, ended up getting a job at Civic Theater, was there for several years until I had some moral issues with some things that kind of shook our community. And so I left and started my own theater and started doing voiceover and audiobook work. And then we got a film incentive in Washington State and film came to Spokane. And so I was doing a lot of costuming, stage managing, or how I was kind of making my living at that point. So they needed some costumers in the films, and that's kind of where I got my start into the film industry. And life is weird. So like I was a costumer for several years, and then we were working on Z Nation actually. They brought in a new costume designer for the second season. I was the wardrobe supervisor season 1. And season 2, when they brought in the new designer, she wanted to bring in her own team, which is not that unusual. But it meant I was like left without a job. And there's, only ever one union job, which, has put me at a living wage in this industry. So I went to the producers and or the UPM and just said, I have all these skills. I think I would be a great AD was really what I wanted, And he said, we've always wanted to try this experiment. We really need someone in accounting who has your on-set experience. And I went, well, I have a theater degree. But I interviewed with the lead accountant and he was like, a trained monkey can learn accounting. It's just wash, rinse, and repeat. But you know how to read contracts for unions and you understand how all this works and how the set runs. And so we need you. So my joining the accounting department also turned the accountants of Spokane to union positions, which was kind of an interesting change. But anyway, they've given me a bit of freedom to get creative with accounting, which I know is not good, but I've gotten systems in place that I think make our workflow here a little easier. But yeah, anyway, that's the very Reader's Digest version of my journey.
Wow. So when did you start directing? Was that when you opened up your own theater?
So I had been directing theater I mean, since high school. I loved
Okay.
directing theater. And how I got into directing film is kind of, it's funny. So are you familiar with the 50-hour slam?
Yes.
So it's the timed film competition that I call, it's just like Spokane Filmmakers Christmas. We all get together and, act like family in the best and worst ways and make a bunch of films.
Yeah.
I was invited to participate on a team by a friend of mine who's an actress who put the team together. It was the second year of the slam. And I didn't really know what job I was going to have. But, we're sitting around with this team and there's, the DP. And turns out the actress who got us all together, she wanted to act. She did not want to direct. And we're kind of sitting around this room with the whole crew and cast. And the DP says, I'd really feel more comfortable if there was a director. So, is there anyone with directing experience? And several heads turned my direction, and I went, well, yes, sure, let's do this. And fortunately, having an amazing director of photography who understands film and was also editing, I learned so much from him, like about transitions and things you don't have to worry about in the same way in theater because you're flowing from beginning to end. Whereas in film, you have to think about, how the scenes are going to connect in very separate spaces. So anyway, we ended up winning several awards that year, and my ego blossomed into thinking I could be a film director. So
That's all it takes. That's all it takes. You just win a couple awards, you're like, oh, I can do this.
I mean, pretty much, yeah. But I mean, I love directing. I love telling stories in collaboration, like I don't think that I am any person that has a single awesome vision that should only be listened to, but I love bringing people's visions together and, having a good grasp of where I think it should go, but also like discovering all the beauty that are in other creative minds around me. So,
well, it sounds like you had a really solid foundation. I mean, you said you started off as writing. I mean, that's huge, right? There seems to be a lack of writers good writers, and then and then directing and acting in theater. So you have that experience, and then running a theater, directing, doing all the above. So you kind of have that broad spectrum of how everything is when it comes to collaboration, how everything works together. And I think that's really important. But let me ask you this: would you rather direct or act?
Direct, 100%.
Really?
I mean, I enjoy acting, but I'm not a great film actor in my own humble opinion. Put me, give me an audiobook, put me in voiceover, I'm your girl. I got you. But film acting, I think the older I get, the more difficult it is to memorize lines. And it really is a stumbling block for me. So it's more of a mental block than anything else. I love getting into a character, though. I do.
Yeah. When did audiobooks start popping up in your realm?
So that was shortly after I moved back to Spokane, when I didn't know what I was going to do other than like live in my parents' basement and maybe get a retail job. I sent out my voiceover demo because I'd worked in radio all through college to help pay my way, through the world. And I ended up having this is another fun story if you'll let me go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, let's go.
There's a local company called Books in Motion out in Spokane Valley. And my dad has loved audiobooks since they were invented because he's super old. So I've been listening to audiobooks since I was a kid, but it never occurred to me like that could be a job. So when I was going through literally the phone book, an actual paper phone book, and mailing out my cassette tape of my demo with my paper resume to every production company and commercial house I could find in the phone book, Books in Motion was there. And I was like, oh yeah, Dad's company that he loves. So I sent a demo into them. They had me in for an audition, and turns out they were like, I have a voice for romance novels, so that's what I was prepared to go in with, and felt really good. Had this like Scottish character, English character, narration, My audition I felt really solid on. And then the engineer's like, okay, we'll have this book. Actually, we're looking for someone too. Why don't you just, take a couple minutes, look at it. We'll have you do a cold read. And I love a cold read. I'm an actor who loves spontaneous, moments like that. But it was before we had smartphones and the internet was not as robust. And it was set in Norway. And normally, like, accents are my jam, but Norwegian was not something I had studied. Pronunciations, they're talking about the locations and these names, and I just know, like, as an actor, you fail with confidence, and people will believe you,
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in the booth, and I'm trying to get my way through this book, and knowing that, like, I am failing right now because I didn't have time to do the research. But as I'm already feeling that I'm not doing my best work, all of a sudden out in the window, in the room outside where I know I'm being broadcast, where the engineer is, I see this line of junior high kids walk in. And like, is there anything more judgmental on the earth than junior high kids? And they're followed by the owner who I had met on my way in. And it just it was really intimidating. And by the end of it, the engineer basically said, don't call us, we'll call you. And I didn't expect that I was ever going to get a second shot at that. But when I started my own theater, Ignite Community Theater was a community I founded and ran for a while. A friend of mine was a narrator at Books in Motion, and he found out the owner was looking for a theater company to do a Western melodrama for the Western Writers Conference. And he pitched my name to them, and I figured out how to write a proposal and went in and pitched a melodrama proposal to him. And anyway, when I was on the phone setting up the meeting with the owner, he's like, let me explain how to get here because it's really kind of crazy in this, industrial area. And I'm like, oh no, I've been there before. I can find it. And he just kind of went, oh, okay. And I realized like, oh no, I hope he doesn't remember me from that awful audition. So we did the pitch and it went really well. And when we're done, he says, I've actually been looking for a new narrator for this book. Since you auditioned for it, do you want to give it another try? And he didn't remember me, thankfully.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, great. A cold read of a book I don't know. But
here we go again.
It was for the Western Writers Conference. So I crossed my fingers. I'm like, yeah, I would love to, Gary, of course. So he gives me the book, and 10 minutes later, I'm back in the studio. And fortunately, it was like a Frenchman, a Scotsman, a Texan, and a New Englander, all in my wheelhouse. It went really well. And that's how I got my first audiobook. So there's like the long story of like failure I never expected to turn around. But yeah.
Yeah. But that's a good testament for people who fail. I mean, don't give up, right? Keep going.
I have failed plenty.
Well, let me ask you this. When it comes to audiobooks, do you find like I don't have that experience. I always thought I wanted to, but do you find that acting helps go into that realm, or are there people who do audiobooks that are not actors?
There are people who do audiobooks who are not actors. A lot of them end up more in the nonfiction side of the world, I will say. But yeah, absolutely. I think to be a successful audiobook narrator, particularly of fiction, you have to be an actor. There is a small percentage of the population who does not want you to do the voices. They just want a slight change in inflection or maybe pitch, but they don't want you to do all out voices. And I read plenty of my own Audible reviews to know that there are some people who just don't like that. They just want a straight read. And that's not me. I'm going to get into the story.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the pauses and the breaths, and we're going to, listen to the wind for a second, all the things.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's led to me having a successful career. There's, a lot of different ways to be successful. I've narrated plenty of textbooks in my day. It is certainly not where I find my passion or my love. But you know, you pay the bills.
Yeah.
One of them was on accounting, ironically.
How did that work?
Well, actually, that was out at Eastern. They had a program on I would just go in, and that was another one where there was an engineer there, and I'd just go in and, read a few chapters every week. Uh, I think particularly those were more geared toward, accessibility. So students who were blind or had issues with eyesight or dyslexia, they could get the audiobooks and check those out, so they could still learn the material. But, that was 25 years ago.
Wow. So, with your experience, director, actor, you've been on film, TV. I always ask everyone this question: what makes a good actor? Can you name like maybe 3 top positive attributes or 3 negative attributes?
Yeah, for sure. A great actor is someone who listens and reacts. Yeah, I think that's the number one thing. You have to be able to get comfortable in your own skin, own the moment with honesty, and listen to your scene partner. I think that's it. As someone who gets up in her own head about memorizing lines and delivering things, letter perfect, because that's how you're trained in the theater. It's easy to lose the moment when you're up in your head about, all these crew people behind the camera doing their thing. But I would say approaching a scene with honesty, openness, comfort, and listening. To me, those are the important things about being a good actor. I also think it's super important to just be a good person too. I've worked with a lot of A-listers. Antonio Banderas once sent me flowers, but that's because I fractured my knee. But we had a great time together. There's a reason everybody loves that guy. He's fantastic. I have had other actors who have gone on to fall into the B list because they were nightmares to work with. But I would say for every one of those, I've got 10 who are just fantastic people. I think to be successful, you just have to be good to work with.
What makes an actor a nightmare?
Well, one was a substance abuse issue. They were going through a very difficult time in their life. They ended up getting a divorce shortly after. But they weren't being honest with themselves about where they were in life and needing help and things like that. Not coming prepared, coming in with a lot of attitude. I think insecurity that's the baseline for a lot of people's, in my humble opinion, a lot of people's problems all stem from being insecure in some way. But yeah, when you come on, you're just being a regular human being and not being someone who expects everyone to be oohed and awed by the fact that you stepped into the room is really important.
A little bit of ego.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Having
think
that
too much
ego
ego and a lack of respect for everybody else needing to do their job is how you become a bad actor.
Take note, audience. What how do you balance directing films that span from various genres, from like a holiday theme to haunting narratives?
I do have a bit of a range in there. And those, you literally just named my 2 favorite genres. I love me a good holiday comfort film and horror. But for me, it all starts with a good story. I talked about being a writer, but that's when I was a child. I really don't bill myself as a writer at all. But I'm a storyteller. And like everything you do needs to serve that story. Like you can have an amazing, beautiful shot that, is worthy of awards just to be on screen. But if it doesn't further your story, you've just taken your audience out of the moment for no reason. And so for me, every choice that you make needs to be in telling that story. And I think all of us have a love of, different kinds of stories and different genres. And as long as you're focused on telling that story, that's the important.
Do you find when you're working with an editor and they're not lining up the shots like you want to do, how does that communication go? How does that rapport go when it comes to like really making sure that the story is in there? And if the editor is like, well, this shot's really beautiful. It's a great shot. We should put it in there.
I go back to, we've got to tell the story. I mean, that's always my baseline. And, I will hear them out. Like, it's important. I don't know everything. Like, I can't edit. That is not my wheelhouse. And I recognize that I'm never allowed to touch a camera for good reason. But, first of all, if you have the ability to surround yourself with people who trust you and who you trust, that's where it all starts. So we can have conversations about, where we disagree on things. And I've disagreed with plenty of DPs and editors and producers, but doing it respectfully. And there have been times I have lost when I'm not the producer. But for the most part, when I'm the director, usually, we come to a respectful agreement. I'm able to win them over to my side.
When you're directing, do you start to edit in your head as you're filming, or are you just focused mainly on that shot?
I'm again focused on the story. I am not great about like storyboarding. I'll be honest, that is something I'm continually working on. I'm seeing what the vision looks like on the screen as opposed to just having this amazing moment that we captured with a camera. Because I do think, there are two different skills, and it's a skill I'm still working on. I won't say I'm editing in my head, but I am often thinking about the transitions because, again, it's a weakness of mine I've been aware of from day one. So I try and always think, okay, what was the moment before this? And what's the moment that's coming up? And of course, like, did we cover all the lines?
Yeah. I mean, do you use a script supervisor for that?
I do sometimes. I'm really into having shot lists. I love having a really good shot list, and sometimes I'll line the script and, make sure I have all those notes ahead of time. But yeah, I probably do a little more coverage than is necessary. Might be something those who work with me would mention.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's all digital now. So, I mean,
when you got the time.
Yeah. So, in your experience in directing Love in the Time of COVID, how did the pandemic shape the storytelling and production process?
Oh, what a great question. So yeah, we shot that during COVID. That was it was for the 50-hour slam that was virtual. And again, had a great writer who I talked with extensively about how we're going to do this. My poor DP, who I think Trevin Spencer, he had a lot less to do. He was also the editor, thankfully. But we had to figure out how to teach people to like themselves. I had to make sure people knew how to keep themselves from being shiny. Every actor had to learn to be their own crew in so many ways. Of course we did, rehearsals and tests to make sure everyone's, lighting and camera and Wi-Fi, was working properly. We were filming in like off hours. We tried to film in off hours, like late at night, because if you're on neighborhood Wi-Fi or an apartment Wi-Fi, during the day, everybody's working from home now. So Wi-Fi speeds were affected. It was, just a whole host of things you never had to think of before. Originally we had a whole crew lined up because it wasn't supposed to be virtual to start. And I didn't want to let them go. So there's a montage at the end of Love in the Time of COVID. And those are all my crew members who, like my craft service person who, suddenly had nothing to do. And, and it was kind of a beautiful way to like keep them involved. They just, it's a montage of like little video messages to the young woman who's the star and birthday messages. So it was a really fun way to keep them included. But, it really was an editor's game on that one.
Yeah. How did that turn out?
I thought it turned out great. But also with Zoom, you have natural edits sometimes.
Right?
Yeah.
It reminds me, so the 50-hour slam, is that only for the Spokane area or is that nationwide?
No, that is just the Spokane thing.
Oh, okay. Because I know over here we always have the 48-hour, and then I've heard the 100-hour So
Yeah, the
I think
film
there's a
races, those are international, and then the 48s are like it's a national company, but they have, like regional competitions. The 48s, poked around here in Spokane, but because we have the 50-hour, they just don't really find a good place to get their feet in, I guess. So, but I know I've
like we
talked with
need 2
those
more hours.
organizers.
Give us 2 more hours, we'll be good.
Yeah, we can't handle this 48 thing.
No, it's too short. Yeah.
Yeah.
What it's kind of I just hearing about the pandemic and what you guys did. I actually was part of a play, and I do remember that now. I totally forgot about it, and it was virtual. We did it all online, and we had green screens and everything. And then some kind of drama turned out, and we can put it out there. It's like, okay, but I have a copy. So yeah,
Maybe I'll interview you next time. No.
So
yeah,
the film Where I Stand explores powerful themes. How did you approach directing such an emotional charge short?
So Where I Stand was a huge labor of love. It was the entire film. It's all women, both behind and in front of the camera. It started out with, I had 2 producing partners, Jennifer Gatz and Alexander Saucier, and we worked together on Z Nation. This all came about in the production office when we were there working late nights. But I just had realized over time, I made an effort to try and make my sets as inclusive as possible. But I started to realize I finally knew enough women in the industry to put together an entire crew. And then we thought, let's make this a learning experience too. So it was everything we did it was a call for scripts. We didn't have a script to start with. We, put out the call for crew, and we put out the call for our amateurs. So I think we had, I want to get the numbers right, but I think we had 30 professional women and 20 amateurs job shadowing each department.
Nice.
And it was no small feat. It was interesting, trying to talk some women into it, because a lot of them had never been in lead positions before. I was like, well, that's the point. So I know you're ready for it. Let's do this. Let me create a safe space for you to do that. Because we're making this happen. And just the natural energy of that project, because not only were we approaching it from all women driven with a, very female empowering story, there was just a natural energy that came from that. But it also, being an educational opportunity, had this sort of gravity to it, responsibility to it, that maybe stressed people out more than it should have, but also brought out, I think, some of the best in a lot of people too, because not only do you have these young women who've never seen themselves as, a gaffer or a key grip, getting to see someone who represents them doing that, they get to help out and learn and ask questions and recognize that they're also, just a human being trying to figure it out. No matter how experienced you get, there's always something new to learn and some new way to fail. But but that project, it's God, is so close to my heart, because it was just an amazing experience with, when you get a group of women together and go 2 ways, but it was such a nurturing environment and an empowering place to be. And I'm really proud of it. Thank you for asking about it.
Well, I was looking up the date, and I'm curious because you build those relationships, and for the people who are not experienced, I mean, this was in 2020, 4 years later. Have you checked back with those people? Are you still in relationships with those folks, and have they grown into the industry?
Yeah, so we actually shot it in 2018, but didn't release it till 2020. There's a whole story about the drives getting lost and post-production. The
I've heard
drives,
those stories before.
The drives were literally lost in a flood in someone's basement of sewage, and I didn't know that person had all of the drives. There was, yeah, that was a mistake. But anyway, lessons learned. So there's no high res version of the film. uh, anyway, but yeah, I'm still in contact with, I can't say all of the women who were involved because we also had like 60 extras. But yeah, a
Wow.
lot of them I'm still in touch with. Jennifer Gatz and I work together all the time. Alex and I are in touch, but she's moved, I think she's in LA now or Las Vegas or anyway, she's been all over the world doing work. And yeah, a lot of the women, even the extras, I just recently had someone reach out because her daughter was a child in the big crowd scene where we're doing the Women's March. And she's like old enough to get it now. And so her mom reached out, like, just to remind her where she could watch it so she could show it to her. And in the current political climate that we're in, it is still very relevant. Because that the Women's March actually was, that was based on the 2017 Women's March was kind of where we set that. So,
Okay.
still relevant.
I think there's a lot of messages out there that still are close to home for a lot of people that, are pushing forward. I mean, that's what we can do.
Yeah, but it was a good launch pad too. I will say, a lot of,
good.
I think a lot of, a lot of women who had their first start as department heads have continued on as department heads, and and it wasn't for everyone. Some have said thank you, but no thank you. Like every film.
Sure. Yeah, that's how we learn. Now, you've worked extensively on both as a director and a producer. How does wearing both hats influence the way you approach a film project?
I am a control freak.
That's normal.
Yeah, I really a lot of it, a lot of the things I've produced and directed are short films. And so they're kind of no budget projects for the most part. I did another learning experience like Where I Stand on a film that I did for a group in Idaho, which was another apprenticeship essentially based film, which was great. But again, not a lot of budget involved. So usually that means I'm producing it myself because I love being in a position where I get to choose who I work with. I don't care how talented you are. If you're a jackhole, I don't need you.
Right.
Especially when no one's getting paid, which sounds awful, but creating an environment where everyone can grow and learn and feel safe to do their best work is so massively important to me. So being a producer when I'm directing gives me that kind of control to know what's happening, bring in the crew I like to work with. It's really nice when there's a second producer that can take that over when I am on set directing. Getting all the paperwork done, I'm just used to doing those things so that, they come easily to me. But it is, it is an added pressure when you have to think about yourself, as the director and the producer. And in those situations, in every situation possible, I will always want to have a first AD on set, keeping us on track, keeping us on time, keeping my rabbit holes to a minimum. So, I think as a director, it gives me great comfort and great freedom to be my own producer, to be honest.
I can relate. I know what that's like. Have you found your your set crew that you like to work with, and then do you reuse the same actors?
Yes and no. I never had, there's no guarantees with me. I really enjoy working with different people. Because I also think, forgive me if this sounds really egomaniacal, but I am very experienced and I like running a professional film shoot. And I think it's a great learning environment for people. So I really like to always have someone on my crew who's very new to film, or who may be getting to be in that position for the first time. But there are, people I absolutely love to work with and, I mean, Trevin and I have done several films together. There's no like, I'm always going to use you or I'm never going to use you.
Yeah.
Because I am blessed by knowing so many great people. It would be impossible for me to bring them all on every time. And
Right.
I really like to be a launch pad for their success. So, like, come play with me for a while, see how I do it, use what works for you, and, launch yourself.
I think that's really good. I think experience goes a long way. And I think, there's some projects that you go on, I've been a part of, and, it's instead of just saying, well, let's just see what happens. There's a structure that's involved, right? And we have steps and we got things that we got to do and accomplish. So I think that's really good.
Yeah.
What, how do you absorb constructive criticism from all aspects, either from audiobooks, from your film directing, acting, your projects that you're involved?
Hopefully, when you receive the criticism, you're in the right headspace to get it. Like, I do not go on Audible and read my reviews when I'm feeling sad. That is not the place to go to cheer yourself up, even though I have plenty of lovely reviews. But, that one sticks in your craw. So I try to be in the right headspace when I know I'm going to be receiving criticism. But also just like trying to take the ego out of my work, knowing, first of all, it's never just me, so I might be able to blame someone else. No, I mean, there are reasons for failures, and yes, ultimately they're on me, but they're not always in my control. I think, just knowing every day that I can get better and I have room to grow and room to learn. So when I hear that feedback, I also have the confidence to kind of feel like I can take it or leave it depending on the source. If I believe in what I've done, other people's opinions, they can matter or not depending on how I feel about it. But I think it's, if I've stayed true to my vision and I'm proud of the work I've done, I'm happy to hear anything that will help me grow and be better.
Let's say you just created a film. It's in post. You have a draft. Do you send it out to people for feedback?
Generally not. I really have not been one that does that. But again, the majority of my directing has been for film competitions. So you don't have the time, and you're definitely going to get
exactly.
But yeah, like with Where I Stand and things, we had, I didn't do any test screenings or anything, but the production team, the three of us producers, all looked at it and had feedback on things. But yeah, I think it's important for the creative team, to have a say in it. And there's going to be things I see that they don't, or things they see that I've missed. When you've been working on something for so long, you stop seeing the forest for the trees. So It's important to have those eyes.
And then I've had to cut out some of my scenes that I wanted to keep in because it slows everything down. It doesn't go to the story, right?
It's hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is the worst feeling, especially if that was that actor's only scene.
I had to do that. That. And the poor guy was like, my lines were just cut. I'm like, sorry, man. It just didn't flow.
It's true. It's the worst feeling in the world.
Yeah.
But, hopefully they respect the story and, it is what it is.
But then I can always say, well, it's the executive producer that said to cut it out.
Right. You know what? The audio was just awful. I'm so sorry it wasn't usable.
Yeah. We'll get you next time. What are some of the unique challenges and rewards in directing a film like Heart to Heart, where emotional connection is central to the story?
I mean, there's nothing better when like everything comes together in a moment. There's an ending scene in that particular film where they're all at the bar and she's singing, and it's actually lip synced. I don't know if you can tell that, but probably. Because my composer was in LA who recorded all the music, and we didn't have the capability to do it live. So she recorded it with the vocals and, anyway, it was a 50-hour slam. But, and it took more than a few takes, I'll say, to get it there. But when we finally, everybody took a breath and got in the moment, and the single shot of the camera is going through the crowd and she's singing perfectly in sync, and everyone's just in the zone, you just feel it on set. It's this electric moment. Or when, two actors have this, amazing connection, the lines are just flowing and we're also in the moment. I forget to call cut. That I think those are the biggest rewards. For that one, the biggest challenge totally was figuring out, we had to get a song into the film as part of the competition. Anyway, and lip syncing to someone else's music is very difficult when you haven't heard it 30 times in your car in the last week. So that was a challenge, but I feel very fortunate that I don't think I can take credit as a talent, but it was a gift from the gods, if you will, that I'm pretty good with timing. I say we're going to be done by 9. We are done by 9, or possibly 9:05 or 8:55. But I've been on set enough to understand what it takes to get a scene done and get the coverage you need. That I try and be very generous with my schedule so I can take the moment. I always build in rehearsal time. And if you don't, you're really shooting yourself in the foot. But in those rehearsal moments where your actors, you get to dig into the meat of the scene when they, put it all there in front of the camera, it's so rewarding. The payoff is definitely worth it. But
have you ever worked with an actor who doesn't really appreciate rehearsal?
Oh, sure.
How does that go?
Don't usually work with them again. But no,
You're out.
I mean, no, there's not a lot of them, but there've been a few folks, and they call themselves method actors, and that's unfair to traditional method actors. But it's this I need it to be organic, I need it to be in the moment, and it's super unfair to the other actors in the scene to not rehearse it. And if you're doing improv, well, okay, it's improv. That's where it belongs. But, in rehearsed narrative, it's kind of unfair to the camera and sound folks and lighting. And, there's so many other factors that go into it. That, if you don't want to rehearse, I really want to. So let's not work together. It's cool.
There's the door. How do you budget your time for lighting?
I ask my gaffer and my DP, how much time do you think you're going to need? And I try and be respectful of that. And then I add 15 minutes. Don't tell them. I never believe them, but even though I love them. But
so this is all pre-production, you're doing that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, so even on timed film competitions, you have an idea of what your day is going to be like. And so when I'm figuring out the scenes, oh God, we're going to need, at least an hour and a half to light this scene. So I need to cut back the number of shots I'm going to do. Or we're only going to have time to light it from one direction. So I need to figure out how to do this in a 2-shot and maybe, over the shoulder. Or, I have to plan my shots around, I only have a certain amount of time budgeted for each scene. How do I make it work with the shots? And fortunately, again, having had a lot of time on film sets, when I was a set costumer for I don't know, 9 years or something. And there's a lot of time to just be on set. A lot of my job is watching what's happening, managing continuity, but I have a lot of time to just listen and watch and see that preparation happening. And it was amazing to be given that gift to be able to absorb all the different departments and how they work together, and having a good grasp of that, when I set up my own films. Has been extraordinarily helpful.
So when you're setting up your own films and you're experiencing costuming, do you really focus on that area? for your films? Or, I mean, if you're doing short films, I would imagine you're having the actors bring their own set of clothes and their own costumes.
Yeah,
How does that?
well, if there's time, to be like, okay, here's the vibe, like we're going like How I Met Your Mother or, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like, you can give kind of a vibe to everybody of what you're looking for, or maybe something specific to their character. That's helpful. And then I always ask everyone to bring at least 3 changes of clothes, you know? Bring me 3 options, because if all 3 of my lead actresses, decide they're going to be in blue, that can be
Right.
a problem. Maybe that's not the theme we're looking for today.
Have you ever like run out to like a Goodwill or something, just grab a bunch of clothes and utilize them?
That's not something I've had to do on my projects. But certainly on, like, when we were starting Z Nation, we didn't have a bunch of zombie clothes around. I remember, for weeks we'd go on all the discount days to whatever day was having the special discount at that thrift store, and just like loading carts with whatever, and then taking it back to the shop and just distressing the crap out of it.
Wow.
But I have my own stock from, years of costuming. So if I need to pull something out, I can. But yeah, generally speaking, I also think people are more comfortable in their own clothes when you're doing, a short with a timed film competition, like let them be
Sure.
comfortable in their own clothes. And if usually I try and have someone who's managing, wardrobe on set, so they can also, look at those options ahead of time and make those decisions, and then present me with options, or,
Okay.
they can help
So
manage that.
you're not that much of a control freak then. You're actually letting that go a little bit.
I mean, I will have the final say, but
Yeah.
but yeah, when
There's
you
nothing wrong with
surround
that.
yourself with people you can trust, there is some
Yeah.
control in that.
Yeah. So, as your background as an actress, how does that inform your approach in directing actors on set?
That's really my strength, I think, because I understand where they're coming from. I know what it's like to be the actor who never gets a note. I was often, the mom, or, in theater, and cast in a lot of roles where I was solid. You could count on me. I didn't need a lot of direction to get the job done. But as someone who's hungry to learn and grow and improve, I know how much it sucked when I didn't get a note, other than, you're doing great. Like, okay, but, like, what's great? What's my
Yeah.
takeaway from this? So I think
Yeah.
that experience, when I work with actors, for me, it's very important to like speak to every actor, let them know, what's working about their performance or what's not working if we need to fix something, but I think having that open communication. And I also love to, like, usually first thing we do is, sit down and do a table read. And then I like to ask the actors questions about their characters, and sort of hear where they're coming from first. And it may not be the same place I'm coming from, and I may like it or I may not. So we'll continue that conversation as needed. Or, there's a very like, that is really interesting. I hadn't thought of it like that. Did you ever consider this? And um, sometimes the vision changes because it informs me in a way I hadn't thought of before. But making them part of the direction, if you will, but like, they're talented people bringing one lens of the character, bringing in, the one viewpoint. They're going to know that character better than I am, by sheer virtue of they have one job and it's that character, and I've got, 75. But yeah, bring in people you can trust and have open conversations with. And again, so much of it goes back to like creating a safe space for people to be vulnerable and be comfortable to bring their best work. So they're not having to think about like, is my hair messed up? Do I have lipstick on my teeth? No, we got folks for that. They're watching all that. You just be you.
What would you say to an actor or actress who's got their lines down, the performance is good? Like, what do you say? Keep doing that? You got
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, I absolutely love that. The energy you're bringing is really exactly what I was envisioning. Like try and find something specific. Like
Hmm.
your line delivery, that is not how I saw it, but it was spot on. And your timing, your chemistry with Karen over there is really bringing it. So keep that up.
It's so interesting because I think, as directing, we're always critiquing the performance and we're always going to give feedback of what we're trying to accomplish. But when somebody has it, you're like, great, let's move on. you know? And it's like,
It's so
okay.
easy to do, but again, like
Yeah.
being that, theater kid sitting there not getting a note when everyone else did, I will always be that in the back of my head. And if I don't give an actor a note, it's shame on me. But
Yeah. I don't want it to come across as, because in certain aspects, I think it depends on the person too. But I think in certain aspects, it's almost like, oh, good boy, you did a good job. You're petting them, good, good, good. You want a treat,
yeah, yes.
and it's kind of like, okay, I got it. I know what I'm doing. Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, but you also like I try and do the same with the crew too, because it is,
yeah,
a weird space we get in where we are coddling and the precious in front of camera. I've tried to be really intentional, and I know I'm not always great at it, but like when my DP's doing a handheld and it just like blew my mind, like you call that out, or when I know that sound was just like their arms are about to fall off because that take was too long, but they had that boom pole in there, like you shout that out.
yeah. That's actually good advice for me because I just directed my first film, and
Oh,
I'm looking back
congratulations.
and going, oh, thanks. I'm looking back and going, did I do that? No, I guess I didn't do that. Did I tell Tyler a good job? No. And there was a take that was just incredible. I didn't cut the take at all because they did it all in one scene, and I was like, that was perfect. There's nothing else that we can do. I mean, there's no reason for me to chop it up. It's just all in one take. So I mean, that was my good job.
Well, you said good job. That's great too.
Yeah, we did it twice, so that was it.
Well, that's
All right,
amazing.
here we go. Thundering Kitten Productions. Where did the name come from, and what drives that passion for your production company?
So Thundering Kitten Productions literally came from it started out as my voiceover company, if you will. So I have a booth here in my house. I have this you can't see it. Why am I looking around like you can? It's a Victorian house built in 1905, tiny little thing. And I'm, not too far from downtown, so I'm in a very urban area. But it has a root cellar. And part of the reason for buying the house is like that root cellar is going to make a great sound booth. And it's not soundproofed, but it is, I've got sound foam everywhere in there. But it's an old house and I am not rich. So it is, not soundproof, but it is sound buffered very well. But the one thing I really didn't think about was, like I live alone with my two cats. And at the time when I installed the sound booth, they were kittens. And it didn't occur to me to like spend a lot of time soundproofing the ceiling, like nobody's gonna be walking up there.
Yeah.
Just above my sound booth happens to be the dining room with a nice wood floor. And those little, I think they were maybe 6 pounds each at the time, they would go running across the dining room floor and it sounds like thunder in my sound booth. So I needed a name for the company and I would always go, like I would have to just stop and wait till they were done playing and I'm like, oh, it's the Thundering Kittens. That was better.
Hilarious.
Yeah. So that's where I wanted a unique name for my company that, was reflective of who I am too.
Well, there you go.
So Thundering Kittens, that's where the name came from. What drives my passion? I think it is probably equal parts this like love of telling stories and this love of community. I love bringing people together and making a film, and I love watching a film that not only tells a great story, but also gives me, all the feels about what a great experience we had together. That is not just, hopefully it comes through in the emotion on the screen. I feel like you can kind of tell when you're watching a movie that people had a really great time making, like maybe it's not the greatest film, but there's just something about the vibe that I'm loving,
Yeah.
And so that's me. I don't think I'm a particularly revolutionary filmmaker. I don't see myself as someone who's, going to tell stories that, are having a huge impact on the world, if you will, or changing a lot of people's visions. I'm more of a mac and cheese comfort kind of gal. But there's a place for that too. I always said, my dream would be to make Hallmark Christmas movies, but with like way better inclusion. Uh, and
Yeah.
so, that's who I am. I want people to see themselves in the films I make. Hopefully not as much in the horror films as the others, but yeah, filmmaking is a community sport, I guess, for me.
So you've done a lot of shorts. Are there any features in the future?
I keep talking about it. I have worked, I have several friends who are writers. I've been sent a few scripts. I'll be honest, I just haven't made the time for it yet. And that's on me. I spend a lot of time in spaces trying to create opportunities and make sure our film industry is, robust, like on the Washington Film Works Board or Spokane Film Project, like trying to elevate the community as a whole. I'm honestly kind of in a little bit of a conundrum myself right now. We're like trying to make better space for myself and my dreams and not putting everyone else's first. Which, that sounds a little over the top, but you know what I mean? There's just, there's so much work to be done in so many ways, but I need to also remember why I'm here and doing this work, It's been a while.
What is your dream?
What is my dream? I honestly would love to be making, not necessarily Hallmark, but, I really love the holiday films. I would love to have, a channel where we could also do horror films. I don't know. The dream is just to keep working, I guess. I would love to be able to direct television series. Megan Griffiths, who's a Seattle filmmaker, is just one of my idols. We're also friends. We've worked together. But, she's directed on several different television series all over the country, and she's making her own films. She's working on an amazing documentary right now. I don't necessarily want to be pigeonholed. I want to be doing work I love with people I love.
How do you see your role evolving in the film industry, especially as you continue to direct, produce, and teach classes about filmmaking, and your involvement with the union 488 and Washington Filmworks?
That's such a great question. I ask myself that every day. Here's breaking news. I'm preparing to decide if I want to run for the president of my local, because the president's stepping down and I've been vice president for 6 years, and or if not, spending more time focusing on a more creative side. So we'll kind of see. I'm on the fence a bit right now. But it's been amazing to be in all the spaces I'm in because of the work I do, both, for labor and Washington Filmworks and locally. I would like to be directing. I would eventually love to have dozens of more people like me who want to be involved and who understand and aren't afraid to step into these spaces. Like, I'm not any smarter than anyone else out there. I'm just a good actor, and I don't say no as often as I maybe should. I've earned the trust of this community in a lot of spaces where I'm allowed to have a voice that not everyone does. So, I want everyone to be able to make a living, and I mean like with benefits and retirement plans, and be artists. I think I keep saying, we need to talk about ourselves not just as artists, but as arts professionals. All the skills we have and what we bring to the table deserves to have a living wage that we can raise a family on and, retire with at a reasonable age. So I guess that's also a dream of mine.
Well, I often wonder, even growing up, you look at sports teams and the amount of money that they make, and then you look at Hollywood films, the amount of money they make. Why why do you have to go through this starving artist stage? And where did that stage come from? And why is that kind of the stereotype for our industry as independent filmmakers?
Yeah, it's so weird. Like, because you're doing something you love, you shouldn't be expecting to get paid for it. It's this mentality. Because, I mean, sports can be the same way too. Like, before they hit the big leagues, they're making bupkis. It's a strange thing we've put, societally, unlike, well, if you're doing a job that society needs but isn't fun, we probably should pay you a lot more. Or, that's a job you must get paid for. But if you're doing a job that the rest of us wish we were doing and seems like a lot of fun, you get the reward in just doing the job, right? That's my view on it, but I have a lot of opinions if we want to dive into the whole system.
Well, that's important because you're the vice president. I think it's really important that you have a voice and give us your opinions and why. I didn't know that there was a union in Spokane until I spoke to Robin.
Oh,
honestly, I had no clue.
Yeah.
Now, is there one? Do you guys only cover the Spokane area, or is there one in Seattle? Or
So, IATSE, International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, is actually the acronym, and it's like 10 words longer, but we just call ourselves IATSE. Local 488 actually covers Washington, Montana, North Idaho, and Oregon. So I am located in Spokane. Our president's in Portland. We've got a business agent in Seattle and another one in Portland, and our secretary's in Portland, and we've got e-board members all over all 4 states. So we cover a much bigger region, and sometimes that works in our favor, and sometimes it works against us because, we don't have the same problems they have in Portland. We don't have the same access they have in Seattle. We don't have the same infrastructure. Montana's infrastructure is not the same as Spokane's, but it is amazing to be a part of a network of, there's, I think, 725 members now.
Wow.
Yeah, seeing the whole cross section of work, and people call me wanting to know what, like, their kit rental should be, and I'm like, I don't know. I actually only ever work in Spokane. I'm not sure what Portland rates are, or things like that.
Yeah, interesting.
But yeah, so we're part, and IATSE is an international union with several little locals underneath it that cover, live theater. That's Local 93 in Spokane, where I actually started out.
It's interesting. I'm so naive when it comes. I obviously know what SAG-AFTRA is because of that whole path, but I didn't know about crew and background and all the the other union side of it. I had no clue, and so I'm pretty. How do people get into that union? How can they join?
Funny, you should ask the membership chair. There's on our website, it's all detailed out, but basically you need to have been a resident in our jurisdiction for 18 months. You need to have a resume, and then you also have to have 30 paid days within the year from which you apply. So in the previous year when you apply, you've got to have 30 paid days in the position you're trying to join under. And, we don't cover camera. That's Local 600, which is, they cover all the camera people in the US and Canada. So there are certain departments we don't cover editors. That's Local 700, and that local covers all of them, so there's a few things we don't necessarily cover, but like grip, electric, craft services, hair, makeup, set dressing, props, that's all us. So
I'm just, I definitely, I feel like a little 5-year-old because I'm like, I didn't know any of this existed.
I didn't either until even when I joined the union, I didn't really know what was happening. It was, I was on a show that flipped, and they basically said, we're going to swear you all in. And I remember my college professor being like, how amazing, important it was to be a member of IATSE. And, that was my theater professor, but I was like, oh, I'm joining IATSE. And I really didn't know what it meant. I teach a whole class for new members. I teach a class on demystifying unions because there are so many people who don't understand this. And that's perfectly understandable. But being in this moment where like unions are on the rise, thank you, Joe Biden, for loving us again. It's great to be in a spot where people want to be part of a union. COVID taught us anything.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we are not protecting gig workers at all. So we've had a huge uptick in applications to the union because people want to be protected. And we are stronger together.
Can you be a union member and work on non-union projects?
Totally. In IATSE. Each guild is a little different. SAG-AFTRA does not necessarily feel the same way. So I've actually never joined SAG-AFTRA myself. While I'm a full supporter, and if I get another role on camera, I will have to join. But yeah, it doesn't always make sense, for everyone to be in the union, and we respect that. But as far as the crew goes, we are, I shouldn't say this, but I will. We're kind of the bottom of the barrel when people are negotiating. We end up with the scraps, but we're considered the most replaceable. It's hard to replace someone when you've shot 90% of your movie and they're the ones on camera. I mean, less hard now, thank you, AI, but we end up being more replaceable. But there's, you've got SAG-AFTRA that covers the actors. You've got IATSE covers most of the crew. You've got WGA that covers the writers. DGA covers the directors and assistant directors and UPMs. And then the Teamsters cover the drivers. So those are the main guilds you'll deal with in this industry. And a lot of projects.
Mind blown.
Yeah, a lot of projects don't have the budget to be a union project, and we get that. So, but you all got to put food on the table. And, we also have like super low budget agreements if you want to be able to try and pay into your crew's, benefits. You can, in fact, pay the minimum wage and still be a union job. But, I should say, I think we're probably the easiest guild to deal with on that level, and easiest one to be a part of. But I can't speak to all the others and their restrictions, but they definitely have, like DGA and SAG have more restrictions on doing non-union work than we do. We just want you to feed your family.
That's one of the things. I had an actor fly in from LA, and he used to live in Washington. That's how I know him. And we worked together before, and he moved to LA to, make it in film. And I said, hey, I got a short. I want you to do it. You're going to be the lead. And, but I had to fill out the paperwork with SAG-AFTRA.
Yeah.
And like, this is a micro budget film. There's no money in it whatsoever, but we still had to do it. And there were rules. He couldn't drive a car, couldn't do any fight scenes, no intimacy scenes, no stunts. So there was no action in my film. So
they do restrict it. When I did the last 50 Hours Slam, Women in Labor, that film, one of my leads there is a SAG actress, so we had to fill out the paperwork for that too. And the rules, it is real, but it also was like accessible to get to use her. And we've been wanting to work together for a long time, and I was willing, just like you, to put in the work to do the paperwork. But and
it worked. I mean, he won 4 Best Actor awards, so I mean that's my payment to him. There you go.
Well, congratulations. Good choices.
There you go. So, Rebecca, what has been your greatest accomplishment in the film industry, and what have you learned from it?
Oh, God. Come in with the heavy hitters. My greatest accomplishment? I don't really know how to answer that. Like where I stand comes to mind, I guess I have never wanted to admit out loud that there's like a very strong teacher vibe in me, and I love mentoring. And it's been incredible. Like, the years I've been in the business, like just last night, I was messaging, on Facebook with someone I've mentored over an issue. And today I had a meeting with 2 young folks who I've mentored who are getting ready to do their first feature. And, there's just a lot of people I'm watching, like their stars rise and they have the confidence to go out and reach for their dreams, and watching them have success has been more fulfilling than I ever would have realized. So that's been like, that feels really important of all the things I've done,
Absolutely.
Um,
That's really good.
what have I learned from it? I mean, film is a team sport. I mean, it's so much about, like, for me, the community of film. I can't do this alone. I wouldn't want to do it alone. I can sit and do an audiobook all by myself. I'd say I lock myself in a padded room and talk to myself all day. And I love that too, because there are days I want no human interaction whatsoever.
Yeah.
But, at the end of the day, it's important to be surrounded by people you enjoy working with, doing work that you love.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to start out and be a director?
Be an actor at least once. Be a DP at least once. Or, maybe that's a little ambitious to say. I've never actually been a DP, but I took a class, and that was what led to being told never touch a camera. But like, have respect for understand the departments, understand all of the departments, whether they're in front of the camera or behind the camera. Like, just take an interest in learning what that means. Don't start as a director. Don't start as a producer. Be a PA on a show. Try out another one of those jobs where you are working towards someone else's vision, so you can fully appreciate what you're putting your crew through. It's probably my best advice. And remember to tell the story. Like, just remember to tell the story.
What is next? Anything you're working on now or in the near future?
Working on now. Hasn't been announced yet, but it should be by the time this podcast comes out. So I'm actually not teaching this quarter. Normally I teach a film producing class, but there was a bit of a change in things at the college, so I'm not teaching that class anymore. But the drama department asked me to do a play festival, so we're doing a one-page play festival in December. We'll be putting out a call for. I used to do that festival over for Stage Left Theater, but when I retired from that to gain back some of my life, now I'm just reviving it somewhere else. But and then next quarter I'll be co-teaching the directing class, so I'm excited about that.
Very cool.
Oh, and if you are a Spokenite and you're a fan of the Campbell House, for 11 years now, I've been playing Hulda, who is the cook at the Campbell House for the holidays. It's a living history project. So Hulda Olson was an actual person who cooked for the Campbells, and every year around the holidays, we include Robin Urhausen is also one of the actors we bring in to the house, and so you enter 1910 and get to interact with the actors in their 1910 environment. So that's always fun.
Is there a story to it? Is there like?
It's all improv, actually. So like, I started out in the kitchen cooking sugar cookies, and there's a secret to the Campbell House cookies that was entirely invented by this Hulda, which is based on something my grandmother taught me, which is really fun. I'm not going to reveal the secret. You got to come and try it out. But because I actually fractured my knee on a film set and injured my back.
Ooh.
So I have a hard time standing for long periods anymore and doing the thing that has made the cookies famous. So I now, as Hulda, sit in the servants' dining room, and you get to sit down and chat with me, and we talk about menus and food and holiday traditions, and maybe I'll spill a little tea and find out if you got the secret from the new cook who's being tested out in the kitchen, and see if she's taught you the secret of the Campbell House cookie. But yeah, it's interacting with us. We all have certain stories we know about our characters in the house, and but the whole goal as an actor on that particular job is making sure the guests have a magical experience. Like, we're not going to break character. You know, for me, Hulda's Santa Claus. Like, there's just a magic there you can't break.
All right, Rebecca, we're going to dock the ship here, but before we do that, I got 3 more questions for you. You ready?
I'm ready.
What's your favorite tech when
My
it comes
favorite
to
tech.
the film?
I knew that question was coming because I've listened to the show. As as someone who's not allowed to touch a camera, I will say my favorite tech to use on set is a wireless handheld remote. I mean, a remote monitor. So a wireless remote monitor that I can carry around with me and actually point to the DP or the actor, like, this is why I need you to move this way. I know it feels unnatural, but this is how it looks. Like, it can be just super illuminating when you've got it right there to walk around with. When I don't lose it because I set it down in the wrong place, I'm so sorry, Trevor. You know, that's, you know, I don't have like a brand name to tell you, but that's a piece of technology I love. And then I will say, as someone who also works in the administrative side, if I did not have Excel, Microsoft Excel spreadsheets to organize everything, I would be lost.
Yeah. You ever use Studio Binder?
Like I know the website, and I've downloaded some of their stuff, like with my students, some of their forms and things.
Yeah.
But I'll admit, I've created a lot of my own because I'm a control freak.
Yeah. And don't worry, they're not sponsored. They're not sponsoring us. It's just,
I mean, I love Studio Binder. No, they have amazing resources. They do.
How do you now, because of audiobooks and because of what you brought up with, you know, narrating books and stuff like that, how do you feel about AI?
AI should be doing the work we hate to do. It shouldn't be doing the work we love to do. AI should not be replacing creatives. It scares me. It scares me a lot, frankly. I mean, we've had, you know, text to voice programs for a long time. And, you know, they used to be total crap, so I didn't feel threatened at all. But now people are using them, you know, for audiobooks, and they're using them in different creative spaces. And yeah, I am all for regulations. I'm in a lot of political spaces, particularly because of the, you know, labor work that I do. So I do talk with politicians and try and stay on top of legislation. I'm by no means an expert on it at all, but I think there are really important conversations happening with people who have been studying it well above my head, who are looking out for our interests. You know, the contract negotiations and the strikes, WGA and SAG-AFTRA were centered, like the main problem they were having was the AI regulations. And thank God they held out like they did, because it made it a little easier for, you know, for IATSE to negotiate our contract because of the work they did ahead of us. But we got to keep an eye on it, you know. I mean, it has its place. There are certainly so many things none of us want to do that AI will do for us. And, you know, God bless you, go for it. But these creative spaces, and especially when you got like Mark Zuckerberg out there saying, you know, well, we were just, you know, stealing from creatives that it wouldn't have been worth any money anyway. Dude, go do things. I can't say those words on camera, you know, like, dude. Whether or not you find value in it, an artist's, you know, unique work has intrinsic value, and you don't have any right to steal that.
Yep.
So there's my feelings.
Thank you. Well, I mean, that's been a consensus across the interviews. So, Rebecca Cook, how can people reach out to you if they want to get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Oh God, what a great question. My email. I do have a website out there, which I couldn't even tell you the domain name off the top of my head. But
I have it. We will post it in the show notes.
But yeah, I'm, you know, part of Spokane Film Project or IATSE, if that's the route you want to go. Yeah, on Facebook is probably the easiest way to find me and reach. That's how we met.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like, yeah, I'm out there if you need me.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the Downing Cut. I appreciate your time.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. What a joy to get to know you a little bit too.
Oh yeah. I haven't been interviewed yet. My wife said that she's going to do that. We'll see what happens there.
Excellent. I fully support that.